Robert Harrison stood at his living room window, watching the ninth nanny drive away from his elegant colonial home. The woman's tires kicked up gravel as she fled, just like all the others. Behind him, he could hear his 7-year-old twin sons, Mason and Carter, laughing from somewhere in the house. Robert was 42 years old, a successful investment banker with silver beginning to thread through his dark hair. His wife, Elizabeth, had passed away 3 years ago from cancer. Since then, raising the boys alone had become his greatest challenge, one that his business acumen couldn't solve. The twins weren't cruel children. They didn't break things or hurt anyone, but they were wild, untamed, full of energy that seemed impossible to channel. They would dig elaborate tunnels in the backyard, turn the bathtub into a lake for toy boats, and create obstacle courses that stretched through every room. The nannies called them unmanageable. Robert called them lost. He rubbed his tired eyes and checked his watch. It was only 2 in the afternoon, and he had 3 conference calls scheduled. Who would watch the boys now? "Mr. Harrison?" A gentle voice came from behind him. He turned to see Grace Morrison, his housekeeper, standing in the doorway. Grace was in her late 50s, with warm brown skin and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. She wore her orange and white uniform dress with yellow, cleaning gloves still on her hands. She'd been with the family for 5 years, quietly cleaning, cooking, and keeping the household running. "I saw Miss Peterson leave," Grace said softly. "That's the 9th one." Robert sighed deeply. "I don't know what to do anymore, Grace. The boys are good kids, I know they are, but no one can handle them. And I can't keep taking time off work. The firm is counting on me." Grace was quiet for a moment, then said something that surprised him. "Maybe they don't need handling. Mr. Harrison, maybe they just need understanding." "What do you mean?" "If you'd like," she said carefully, "I could spend time with them after my cleaning duties. No extra charge. I raised 3 boys of my own. They're grown now with families. I remember what it was like." Robert looked at this woman who had been part of his home for years, yet remained almost invisible. "Grace, you already do so much. I couldn't ask you to—" "You're not asking," she smiled. "I'm offering. Those boys lost their mama. That kind of hurt comes out in different ways." Something in her words struck deep. Robert found himself nodding. "If you're sure—" "I'm sure," Grace said. "Let me finish the kitchen, then I'll find them." 20 minutes later, Grace walked into the backyard. She'd taken off her gloves and apron. The twins had created an elaborate mud pit using the garden, hose and old tires that Robert kept meaning to throw away. They'd strung rope between the tires to make some kind of crawling course. When they saw Grace approaching, they froze. Adults usually meant scolding, but Grace simply looked at their creation with genuine interest. "Well now," she said, "that's some impressive engineering. How deep is that mud?" Mason, the one in the red shirt, blinked in surprise. "About 6 inches. We measured with a stick. And those tire supports?" Grace continued, walking closer. "Did you tie those knots yourselves?" Carter, also in red but with a slightly darker shade, nodded eagerly. "Grandpa taught us before he died. Remember, Mason? He said every boy should know how to tie a good knot." Grace's eyes softened. "Your grandpa was right. Those are fine knots." The boys exchanged glances, unsure what to make of this adult who wasn't yelling. Grace lowered herself carefully to sit on the grass near the mud pit. Her joints protested a bit, but she ignored them. "You know what I see when I look at this?" "A mess?" Mason said quietly, waiting for the inevitable lecture. "No, honey. I see 2 boys who are creative and smart. I see children who need to build things and explore. That's good. That's healthy." She paused. "But I also see 2 boys who might be feeling something big inside that they don't have words for." Carter's lower lip trembled slightly. "We miss Mom." "Of course you do," Grace said gently. "And that missing doesn't go away. But it does change. It gets softer over time, like an old blanket. Dad doesn't like it when we play rough," Mason admitted. "He says we're being difficult?" Grace shook her head. "Your daddy loves you more than anything in this world. He's just scared. Scared he'll lose you too somehow. Scared he's not doing it right. Adults get scared too, even daddies who wear fancy suits." The twins moved closer to Grace, sitting in the grass beside her despite their muddy clothes. "My boys were wild too," Grace continued. "My youngest, Marcus, he once built a ramp in our driveway and tried to jump. His bicycle over 3 trash cans. Broke his arm in 2 places. She chuckled softly. But you know what? He's an engineer now. Builds bridges. All that wild energy found its place. Really? Carter's eyes widened. Really, energy isn't bad. It just needs direction. Grace looked at both boys seriously. Here's what I'm thinking. What if we make a deal? You two can keep playing and building and exploring. That's what boys should do. But we'll do it in ways that don't scare your daddy or make work for everyone. And we'll also do it together so you're not alone. You want to play with us? Mason asked, disbelief in his voice. I want to be with you, Grace corrected. There's a difference. I'm too old for mud crawling, but I can hand you tools. I can help you plan. I can make sure you're safe. And most importantly, I can listen when you need to talk. Over the following weeks, something remarkable happened in the Harrison household. Grace didn't try to tame the twins. Instead, she channeled them. When they wanted to dig, she helped them create a proper garden bed for vegetables. When they wanted to build, she brought them wood scraps and showed them how to make a birdhouse. When they had too much energy, she taught them games from her childhood. Red light, green light, 4-square freeze tag. But more than activities, Grace gave them something no nanny had offered, her presence. She didn't watch them from a distance or count down. The minutes until their father came home, she sat with them, asked about their day, told them stories about their mother, stories Robert had been too heartbroken to share. Your mama had the most beautiful laugh, Grace told them one afternoon while they were painting the birdhouse. When she laughed, her whole face lit up. Just like yours, Carter. The boys drank in these stories like water in a desert. Robert noticed the change immediately. The house grew quieter, but not silent. It was a peaceful quiet, not a tense one. When he came home from work, he found his sons sitting with Grace at the kitchen table, doing homework or drawing pictures. The frantic energy had transformed into focus. One evening, Robert came home to find all 3 of them in the backyard. Grace sat in a lawn chair while the twins carefully planted tomato seedlings in the bed they'd prepared. Dad! Mason called out. Look! Grace says these will have tomatoes by summer. Robert walked over, loosening his tie. He saw the dirt under his son's fingernails, the smudges on their faces, but also something he hadn't seen in a long time. Contentment. Grace, he said that evening after the boys were in bed, I need to talk to you. Grace looked worried. Is something wrong, Mr. Harrison? No, he said quickly. Everything is right. More right than it's been in 3 years. I want to change your position. Not housekeeper, nanny. With a proper salary for both roles. The boys need you. I need you! Grace's eyes filled with tears. Mr. Harrison, I'd be honored. But I don't need more money for loving those boys. That's not work. That's a gift. Grace, Robert said, his own voice thick. You gave my sons back to me. You saw what I was too blind to see, that they weren't being difficult? They were being children who hurt. Let me do this, please. Grace nodded, wiping her eyes. All right, then, but on one condition. What's that? You start having dinner with us. Every night. Those boys need their father at the table. Robert smiled. Deal. 6 months later, the Harrison home had transformed. The backyard was no longer just grass. It was a garden with vegetables, a properly built obstacle course, and a corner dedicated to a bird sanctuary the twins maintained. Inside, photos of Elizabeth had returned to the walls. Grace had gently encouraged Robert to stop hiding them. She's part of this family, Grace had said simply. Always will be. One Saturday afternoon, Robert stood at the same window where he'd watched 9 nannies leave. But now he watched his sons teaching Grace how to throw a football. She was laughing, her throws wobbly and wild, while the boys ran around her in circles. He realized something profound. Grace hadn't fixed his children. She had seen them, really seen them. Their hurt, their energy, their need to be heard. She had offered them not discipline but compassion, not control but understanding, and in doing so, she had taught Robert how to be a father again. That evening, after a dinner filled with laughter and stories, Robert tucked the twins into bed. Mason looked up at him with serious eyes. Dad, are you going to send Grace away like the other nannies? Robert's heart broke a little. Never. Grace is family now. She's not going anywhere. Good, Carter said sleepily. She understands us. After the boys fell asleep, Robert found Grace tidying the kitchen.
Grace, stop.
Sit down. She looked surprised but sat at the kitchen table. Robert sat across from her. I never properly thanked you, he began. Not just for watching the boys, but for teaching me something important. I was so busy trying to control their grief, I forgot to honor it. You showed me that love isn't about managing people, it's about meeting them where they are. Grace reached across the table and patted his hand. Mr. Harrison, Robert, you're a good father. You were just carrying too much alone. We all need help sometimes. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. Elizabeth would have loved you, Robert said softly. She would have trusted you with our boys. I think she did, Grace said, smiling gently. I think somehow she sent me to you all. Years later, when Mason and Carter graduated high school, they both gave speeches thanking their father. And Grace, whom they'd long since started calling Grandma Grace, they talked about the woman who saw two wild boys and, instead of breaking their spirit, helped them build something beautiful with it. And Robert Harrison, successful banker and devoted father, understood that the greatest investment he'd ever made wasn't in stocks or bonds. It was the day he trusted his housekeeper to see what he had missed, that his sons didn't need another nanny. They needed someone who understood that healing doesn't come from discipline. It comes from love.